Hello and welcome to By the Numbers, a public health podcast. I'm Addie Olson, the Public Health Communications Officer with the Polk County Health Department. And today we're going to talk about public health, emergency preparedness, and how those things intersect. And the number that we're going to start with is 122. So in 2024, Iowa has experienced an unprecedented 122 tornadoes, setting a new record. And in this episode, we'll dive into the public health and emergency preparedness response to emergencies, such as severe weather events like tornadoes. We'll also hear stories from the devastating Greenfield tornado, and we'll discuss how communities can prepare, recover, and build resilience in the face of such disasters. So joining me today are Franny Medeiros, the Polk County Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coordinator, and Zach Woods, who is our Public Health EMS Healthcare Coalition Coordinator. And you guys have the longest titles ever.
Yeah, try fitting that on like a mortgage application.
Yeah, they'll have fun putting that on the name bar.
Right.
Yep.
All right, so Franny, I wondered if you could just set the stage for us by talking about emergency preparedness, public health, and how those things intersect.
Yeah, sure. So public health's role in emergency preparedness is to provide the community with education and tools so that they and their families can be safe and that they can recover from an event. We also coordinate with our healthcare system so that during an event, the main objective of any situation out there is life safety, no matter where you sit in the fire, EMS, so flooding, any type of an event. So our job is to make sure that we're supporting the healthcare system, building resiliency with them, and making sure that they have the resources that they need.
Okay. Keeping people safe, helping them out.
Yep.
And one thing I've learned about you is that you've worked in this field for quite a while
Yes.
now. So what is like your emergency preparedness elevator pitch if you only have a short time to tell someone how to be prepared for an emergency?
Yeah. So make a plan, build a kit, and stay informed. 3 very easy steps. Just to talk a little bit about making a plan, first off. It's kind of like doing a hazard vulnerability assessment. You do those with insurance or, other things in your life, your financial planning and such. You also need to think about, okay, what are the things in my world that could affect me? It could be that I'm electrically dependent, right? It could be that I'm in a flood zone or close to a river, or that we get tornadoes, or unfortunately, like this week, hurricanes. Luckily, we don't get those here. But so then look at, what do I really need to be concerned about? Do I take medications? Do I need a hearing aid? Do I have animals? So do I have pets? So once you make that plan, then you can start building your kit. So building your kit, it's going to be one for you and then one for each person in your house, and then also for your pet. Make it fun. Some people think it can be expensive. If you can't afford to do one right away, like put everything in right away, go ahead and do it monthly. Say, okay, this month I'm going to make sure that I laminate my insurance card. I'm going to buy a new charger. I'm going to make sure that I have my driver's license, also a copy of that as well, all the important documents, and make sure that that's in that. For an exhaustive list of things that you could put in a kit, you can go out to Emergency Management, Polk County Emergency Management's website or Public Health website. Thirdly, but to me, almost just the most important is be informed. And we want you to be informed the right way. We all like to get on our phones and look at social media, but that information isn't always vetted. So make sure that you're following the appropriate sources. So your government sources, news stations too, because our EOC partners will make sure that media gets the appropriate information and to get that out. We're all trained in public health and in public information that we're going to give you situation and usually what actions you can take at that time. Make sure you're following those actions. There's another form that you can do. We always like to have redundancy, right? What if we don't have electricity? Alert Iowa. Alert Iowa also can, you can register for that on the emergency management website or also on Public Health's website in Polk County. And that brings you any alerts. So missing person alert can go on that, severe weather alert if you need to shelter in place, or if there, tornadoes or such like that, or flooding. Okay. Then there's also Rapid SOS. Rapid SOS is something that you also can sign up for. And that is a neat function that sits at dispatch centers. You put in all your information in there. So then if you were to call 911, it will show the dispatcher what information's there. You have pets. You maybe are hearing impaired, or you can't see. You're in a wheelchair, or you have children, and this is where their locations would be, etc. It's safe. So the only time it comes up is when you call 911. And then once that is finished, once the case is closed, then it disappears and it won't come back again.
Okay.
So it's like a reverse 911 system at that point. So it's giving information about the caller. So
That's super cool. So if I call 911 and I've already been through this system and input my information, they'll be able to see, oh, she has a daughter, pets, whatever, everybody's age, medical condition, things like that.
Yeah.
Very
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, make a plan.
Yeah.
Make a kit.
Yeah.
Stay informed.
Yes.
Okay. Zach, what's your elevator pitch?
So my pitch is just, on a positive side of thing is preparedness is an equal opportunist. We all have the ability to prepare ourselves to the best of our ability, to kind of make a plan. Franny alluded to a lot of things, to be informed. I think in today's world, we can all do that. That's all achievable. Kind of on the flip side of that, disasters are also an equal opportunist. They don't care about, health, wealth, background. They're going to happen. And just knowing that everyone is susceptible to a disaster, really important. So when we talk about preparedness, talk about, the public health preparedness piece that affects everyone, our whole community. Also just to not go like full Boy Scout, but, I think, I think a key is like, you have to think about this individually, like help is minutes away when seconds matter. So kind of that plan, like in a fire, if you have no idea how your family is going to get out and you've never practiced that, individually, those are things that you can control and have a better outcome for yourself in a disaster. So really important there. We have great first responders, great response times. They do, great things, but you as an individual can be prepared and be there to help your family out and when those seconds count.
Absolutely. And it just makes me think of a rule of life, which is that we can't control everything, but we can control some things, how we prepare, how we react. Those are all things that we can think about before something that we can't control happens, just to be a little more ready.
Absolutely.
So circling back to the number of tornadoes that have hit Iowa this year, 122, which is a record for the state in 1 year. And Zach, I know that one of those hit close to home for you when the Greenfield tornado, which was an EF4 tornado.
Correct.
Hit the home and farm of a family member. So thank you in advance for your willingness to share about this. I just super appreciate hearing your story.
Yeah.
And can you just walk us through kind of, what it was like when that tornado struck and what it was like to just have a real life experience after having worked in this field for so long. Yeah,
absolutely. So when that was going on, actually, Franny and I were working, but their farm was hit. They had like a full loss of everything. All structures were gone. Everybody was fine though. So that's good. That was like a huge savior, like 2 kids, 2 adults walked out of their basement, pretty much unscathed. There were some minor injuries involved there, but everybody's okay, like physically now with that. But so I just had like 2 phones. I had like my work phone and it was just touching base with Franny, then through our jobs, trying to help Coalition and then also like family. So my wife was like, we need to get there. We need to help them. And it's like, well, we can't because we still have to shelter in place because we can't drive into that tornado.
Right.
So that was really stressful. And like the wait was really kind of the worst thing, I think, at that point, where it's like we want to be there, but we can't. And then all this other stuff was happening. And it was like pretty stressful for that amount of time. When we got there, though, just the brevity of it was really harsh. Just everything flattened, everything gone, and kind of tough to see. But knowing that everybody was okay, for the most part, was good to know. And then just the outpouring of people coming and helping, community members helping community members was really cool. We found a lot of personal items like that night, like their wedding rings. They had set their wedding rings on their nightstand or whatever, but like finding 2 needles in a million haystacks there, like, I don't know how that happened, but that was really remarkable. That I think we got a text message from her that was like, "Hey, I lost my wedding ring. Can you look?" And I was like, being a realist, I was like,
There's no way.
Yeah, we can look, but probably never going to find that. And probably 10 minutes later, someone found that ring, and it's just like, okay, that's kind of crazy. But really the biggest thing that they were looking for were those family, emblem things, that scrapbooks. And believe it or not, like, we found a few of them. So that was like some solace that we could go back to there. So, yep. So that's kind of the situation there. And then, the days and even months past, they're still in recovery right now, trying to figure everything out. But that night, the following days was just a lot of like pickup, recovery, salvaging items that could be salvaged, and damage assessment, really. So yeah, that was like that day, that night, and the immediate like 48 hours after. So,
and I think one of the things that stuck with me, earlier, you had told me that didn't their boat go missing, but like they found the wedding rings and not the boat?
Yeah. So their boat was completely gone. And if I'm digging into another question here, sorry about that, but I'll go on with the boat story because it's pretty funny. So some lessons learned from my family. One thing that they wanted to share is just really minimum annually, you need to work with your insurance company. You need to work with your insurance provider and really know what you're covered for and know what you're getting into. Know what's covered at what address, but you would be surprised. So this boat was, I'm guessing, thrown miles away from the tornado and destroyed. So they called the insurance agency and, told them, hey, our boat's gone. We were hit by a tornado. There's, nothing left except for like a piece of the engine that just kind of stuck around. And so again, on the back end of this, there's going to be recovery time. This is definitely like a marathon, not a sprint, if a big event like this happens. And they're still going through this. But what the insurance agency said was, well, okay, so you're saying the boat was stolen. And so they couldn't understand like the brevity of what happened. And so back and forth, and it took like the second supervisor to kind of understand that, but they wanted them to file a missing boat report with the sheriff's office of the county. And they were like, absolutely not. Do you understand what happened here and just how serious this is and how tied up law enforcement is? So the battle of that, I mean, if you think about, you've been through a tornado, you barely survive, you shelter in place in your basement, dealing with that and then adding that on top of it is pretty hard. So but this is just real, stories that I think we've got to be prepared for on the back end. But like we said, ahead of time, if you are minding where you're at with your insurance company, you're doing those annual reviews, it'll put you in a good spot ahead of something like this happening. So,
which makes sense. It just goes back to having your I's dotted and your T's crossed before something happens.
Yes.
And that is the great lesson of emergency preparedness. And what were some other, maybe from either of you, just like lessons learned through Greenfield or past disasters that you've responded to? Things that we might not think about.
Well, I think that Zach really poses a good point of his experience with his family. And it seems to me like they're doing well, but not to, throw you under the bus a little bit, but you were like, this is a hard story to tell for, the family, the mental health, the brain health issue, when it comes to emergency preparedness and going through a traumatic event, whatever it may be, takes a big strain on you. So a part of public health, one of my big incentives or initiatives, I should say, is that you're healthy You need to be healthy, to be the best person that you can be. And that doesn't matter, what economic status, whatever you are living in at that moment. But if you can make sure that you're vaccinated, right? You think about flooding. If you don't have your tetanus shot, you could cause yourself some big illness, which then puts strain on the hospital systems. Everything is a little bit of a domino effect when it comes to, trauma, especially when it affects the larger communities. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself in regards to eating, sleeping. If you have a stressful life, make sure that you're speaking with a therapist. Make sure that you're speaking with your family members, and just making sure that you can be the best person that you can be before going into a situation like that. That is my number one, priority. If we can be healthy, and then we can be resilient, right? Then we can get through this and build, because like Zach said, I was at Greenfield too. And they had such an outpouring support there. I mean, Iowa was just amazing in what they do. So much that they had to find storage for all of the items that were coming in. And I'm sure they're still using that.
Like the items that were being donated
were being donated.
Yeah.
That are coming in. So huge outpouring support in the beginning. We had volunteers that wanted to come in again. This is another part of being informed. If you're a volunteer, make sure you're checking with your local agencies to make sure that they need you, where you should go, how you should prepare to help out in volunteering. Because volunteers huge then, but now they're still dealing with this. Greenfield looks different, but not a lot different. So they're still dealing with that. So that traumatic event for that long of a time, you really have to be resilient and be at the best that you can be always.
Right. And it's not something that it's not going to happen and you get over it a couple months later. Like, that's going to stick with you and have a lasting impact. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of piggyback off of that. So my family just did have a couple of notes to share too. So kind of a lighthearted one is just always keep your receipts. And in like a digital world, that's easy. But if you lose things in a tornado, that's really hard, like those physical copies of things. So, I mean, like they have a house, they have a giant shed with their tractors that were blown away and all the tools, and then a couple outbuildings, things like that. Well, all the tools and things like that, your insurance company may say, like, where's the proof that you had all these DeWalt tools, not to promote like one over another, but that's what they were. And so, backing those things up, because it's like, I don't have them, they're blown away in a tornado, but that stress, of that unknown was still there with that. So always keep your receipts, digital backup were a couple notes. Ordering things online where you get an email receipt can really be actually a positive thing in this case. So, don't delete it. Don't clear out your outbox, like save a receipt file basically on your inbox with something. Kind of piggyback off of Franny there with the mental health recovery. Just know that looks different for different people and different stages of life as well. So, in that there were two little kids under 5 that were impacted by that tornado in my family there. And their development might show a little bit different, and that's kind of normal, and that's okay. We all have different responses to trauma, and I think that's all normal. That's fine, and these are things that could impact a longer growth. So definitely a note there that they wanted to say. And then a kind of big message to close that was just keep your family valuables safe. Like, stuff is stuff, but if you have things that you like really cherish, that's like your family things, like those were the things that we were told to go look for right away, like that night. And I think it was like still raining. We're out there like digging through, trying to find those like scrapbooks and those meaningful things. So, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily the big ticket items. It's the things that are really valuable in your heart.
Yep, so, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
And, okay, so we've talked a lot about preparedness, things to know to be prepared. What does it look like after a disaster strikes? Like, if my house was like taken out tomorrow in a flood, what could I expect the response to be And what should I do after a disaster has already hit?
That kit that we talked about is important no matter what, if you're at home, if you're sheltering in place, or if you had to evacuate immediately. Unless you're severely hurt, I hate to get bad, or you need to go to a hospital, you have to anticipate that there are many other people that are worse off than you, and that you should expect about a 72-hour wait before the emergency operations centers with all of your fire and EMS and public health and hospitals get together to start coordinating what this response looks like. It takes time. Unfortunately, we would love, as emergency preparedness people, to flip the switch and it all just magically appear, but it just doesn't happen that way. Cities have to get together and decide what they're going to do for debris management, and how to help you out. Now, there are cases where if you have to leave, we do have sheltering locations. Again, being informed is the biggest deal. So if you have redundancy and making sure that you have the ability to receive messages from your community resources, that's what we would ask you to do.
Okay. And having a plan, having your kit, being informed are just so key.
They are.
In those first hours after disaster strikes.
Yep.
Okay. Can we circle back to and you talked about this a little bit already, but I know just assessing what you're vulnerable for is a big deal. What should we be prepared for?
I can hop in if you want. Yeah.
You get started off.
Yeah. So Franny had alluded to basically a hazard vulnerability assessment, or HVA. And essentially that's just a fancy term for figuring out your highest risk things that may be in your life. So these are things that emergency management does, hospitals, businesses, they do this as part of a business continuity plan. But I also think you can kind of do this as an individual as well. And Addie and I had kind of talked about this a little bit. We always think of the home intruder, that sort of situation. And that's always forefront on our mind, which is terrible. And I'm not saying not to be prepared against that, but
because I listen to too many murder podcasts, and so I'm ready to be murdered, or to defend myself against a murderer if that situation ever happens. Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. But then logical Zach said, well, what is your, how often does that happen in your community? What is your crime rate versus how often is there a tornado warning? And so if you're preparing and spending your time talking as a family about a home intruder, maybe you should spend a little more time on a severe weather plan or a fire plan. Those are kind of the couple things that we're really vulnerable to. If you're on a flood plan, just kind of depending on your geographic location and, what you've seen historically in your house, if you've been there for a while. And there's probably data that you could get through county as well. But I think individually just kind of thinking through that, or maybe your house has some strange dynamics. It's well, here's our egress route in case of a fire or, a smoke filled, a house. It's we got to get down and we got to go through this route. So kind of the most likely things that you're going to see and that are going to happen that could really impact you in the worst ways. You have to weigh those couple of things there to put together your plan. So.
Okay, which makes sense. I've lived in Iowa most of my life and have been close to tornadoes and bad storms and things like that, but to my knowledge have not been super close to a murderer. So I get it. And okay, what are some of the special considerations for Annie? You talked about earlier, if you have certain medical needs, take those into account when you're building your kit and your plan.
We have a couple of really great tools on the public health website under the emergency preparedness tab that will walk people that rely on power. So if it's through oxygen or, having oxygen tanks or any other device that they need to survive. There is a full list of questions that you work with your provider to ask of what happens if I run out of power? What do I do? Where do I go to? So I really recommend that they go out there and really take a look at that. They can print it off. They could always reach out through us, through our emergency preparedness. Actually, I think it's on the public health. There's an
Mm-hmm.
email that they can email us, right?
Yeah, and I
believe
think
so.
like our general inbox.
Yeah,
Yep, health.
yeah.
It's health DEPT at polkcountyiowa.gov.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they could use that if they want to reach out to me. I am more than willing to help people out with that. So if they have any other, equipment questions, definitely ask the physicians that they work with, and then also the device company too. But I always say the device company says that they have an emergency plan, but make sure that you have your own. Don't rely on them to take care of it for you, because they also have more than just one person to take care of themselves. So we really need to make sure that we're resilient, relying on ourselves in the beginning stages of any emergency.
Absolutely.
And then I also would say too, with or older generation, that there is a great kit that's called Disaster Prep Wise, which is also on our website. And it walks through just our older generation and just the differences in what they need to do to be prepared for an event as well.
Okay. So go to our website.
Yeah.
We're here to be a resource for
Yes.
people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Any other final thoughts or anything that we're missing?
I don't think so. I think, like Franny said, there's, know what you need. If you medication, know what medicines you're taking. Have a hard copy, have a picture. If you're dependent on medication, just know that, because if you're in a tornado, pharmacies may be down, and you may be in a mass shelter, and getting that figured out. That if you have that knowledge and you're responsible for yourself, that's going to help your responders and your people that are putting plans into action on the bigger scale, and ultimately have a better outcome for you as an individual.
Help us help you.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, true to the nature of your work, you guys came in prepared. So thank you for sharing all of this very valuable information. And thank you for the work that you do to keep our communities safe. So be sure to find other episodes of By the Numbers, a public health podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening or watching right now. Thank you.